Welcome back to Wood Elves Abridged. No! It's actually Isengard Abridged. Where last time we had one decisive fight with the Wood Elves. That was one in which we killed their faction leader. Then we went on to kill their faction heir in an auto-resolve, and that destroyed their entire faction, so that was over. Our big decisive fight with the elves ended up being against some rebels. We won that in the end. But then their neighbours, the dwarves, declared war, so the war for this forest isn't over yet. Here's the declaration message. Interestingly, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm have lost their alliance with some other enclave of the dwarves. I think our dwarvish friends elsewhere are outraged that Isengard would ever be attacked. Anyway, so they've got a half stack by the looks of things moving into our territory and a small group besieging the elven capital. At this time it would be great to have this army over here available. They're stuck doing this siege. I probably could actually take it if I really tried, but a combination of me having no faith in my troops and just not being bothered to actually do it means that that siege will continue, and we'll have to work with this smaller army that we do have hanging out on the front lines. We can use them to break the siege, so that's something, but we can't get the engagement, and the other army is still free to move into our lands. Some reinforcements are on the way though. Very gradually another wave of troops, including some very good new units, will be available. Saruman is still doing his project of going to conquer some more Rohan. By the time we get to their nearest settlement, you can see it's full of troops. I guess they realized we were coming. They have fully defended this area. Because of that, we're actually going to take things slow. It's only a 5-turn siege, so I thought, well, we'll just leave them under siege then and try to starve them out. We do need to not lose many troops because we need to keep going and conquer a whole load more stuff. Preferably with this army, because getting another one all the way over there would be quite difficult. Anyway, in the meantime, we just need to deal with the dwarves, and indeed their army does move to start a new siege there at Lim here. Not too bad, but we will need to send our little army to go and help out with that. Seems like more reinforcements are on the way, but Khazad-dûm doesn't have that much territory, so I'm presuming they can't field that much stuff against us. Anyway, for now we go to challenge the besieging force, and they do stand and fight this time, so here's our first battle. Took a look at some of their stats and they're pretty good. Their attacking stats tend not to be too high, but their defensive stats are extreme, and we will see that reflected in this battle. It's very hard to kill these guys, especially their elite troops where the defensive stats are through the roof. We do have numbers on our side, so you can see here a while after the battle started actually, I've got the enemy pretty much surrounded, and we've been hitting them with arrows for a while, which achieved precisely nothing. So we're just going to go in and attack them from all sides. That's really the best we can do, and hope something happens. Actually, it was the dwarves who started this fight, because while I was standing around, I noticed this unit is throwing axes at me. They're throwing it at my general's bodyguard, so I thought surely we can tank that. But I'm guessing that's some sort of armor-piercing ranged attack, because our guys start dying real fast to that. Need to get out of there and engage them in melee with something before we lose an officer, and that's what these spear guard are going to do. They tank a volley, and there we go. Now we've got their ranged unit in melee. That's in theory a good idea, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to die. Everything else charges in and engages stuff in a very vague ring. We've got some free units still, so we can go for flank attacks as well. And with the wargs, I was initially trying to kite some enemies away. I think that would be a really good strategy against these really tanky units, to make them chase me to the edge of the map or something, so I can get more surrounds on those that remain. Nothing like that actually happened though, and we ended up just fighting them all over the place. We still have plenty of numbers, so we can surround all the individual groups, which will speed things up a bit, but not substantially. We're still going to take big casualties in these fights. Here are my out of ammo archers charging into the back of those axe throwers. Well, that didn't really do anything, and the axe throwers will now start killing them because they're okay in melee as well. They've got a couple of weaker units though, some Erebor infantry and a couple of sentry units, which are more comparable to our own things, like our Spear Guard and the Bane Guard, our mid-tier units, and our General's Bodyguard can beat them as well. So we do hack through a couple of units over there, leaving us with just the heavier things after a while. And this is just going to be a big brawl. We're going to grind them down real slow, but at the same time they're grinding us down real fast. It's going to be an unfavourable trade. Here I thought this is probably the best engagement we can do, because our berserkers have really high attack and okayish defense, whereas the enemy have okayish attack and really high defense, and that trade-off, that combination of opposites, might mean we start killing them. Does it actually? Well, sort of. The berserkers seem to do much better than our regular infantry, but still they are going to be cut down one by one. At least we have 2 hit points, I believe, on my berserkers. The dwarves don't have that luxury, so we'll last longer than our stats will make it seem like we should. Looks like their general's bodyguard has just about broken out of his encirclement. He's absolutely annihilated an entire unit in front of him, but now we've charged in with our two-handed axe troops, the Bane Guard. They're, again, probably good against dwarves with their high attack focus on their stat distribution. Anyway, we're cutting now to like 5 minutes later. We eventually cut down all of these heavy infantry units, taking a bunch of casualties along the way. Somewhere in these blobs, their general managed to die, another case of their morale being unbreakable. So they all die, we don't have to worry about them running away. And here's the eventual result once we've grinded through everything. Our losses were actually 600, but we only have 400 soldiers lost or so. We've got good casualties restored on that fight. Overall then, okay, we are still ready to go and fight again with this force, and we'll probably need to because there are all these other little dwarvish armies around the place. They're all no threat on their own, so we want to try and kill them now before they unify. I'm quick to capture that bridge where a couple of the groups are coming in towards our territory. Took a look at Khazad-dûm itself. We can only see one half of it, but that half isn't very heavily guarded, so that's a good sign. That little place across the river that we had under siege is actually close to surrendering, but I wanted to take it right now to free up these troops to come back and to just have a little bit more on the front line for us. That auto-resolve looks fine right now. I thought I'd have to do this manually, but luckily this is back to pure trash, back to single-digit enemy stats. That's what we like to see. That auto-resolve though, that's not what we like to see. It was a really bad auto-resolve, and we lost half of our army, so that doesn't really free up all that much in the end. At least, we took a settlement and we can get some money off it in the long run. I think I brought 1 unit back, and here we are at the start of the next turn with some interesting news. Western Moria has been taken by the orcs, or the goblins I suppose it is. So that means Khazad-dûm is presumably getting screwed over to some extent. Also says I've reached Mount Doom there, it's because I got map information from Mordor. Anyway, you can see that Khazad-dûm's garrison has swelled, probably with survivors from the other side of Moria. So hopefully the dwarves are getting owned, and that will help us out in our conflict with them. You can see a small group decided to stand in front of my army on that bridge in the west, and I thought, well, let's just kill them right now. I guess they didn't think this through, because now they're in trouble. Luckily, this guy, this general, is only escorted by what passes for trash in the dwarf roster, so nothing too difficult this time. They formed up in a big column, so I formed up in a big V and just ran at them, meaning we instantly surround them. Gonna go for some nice surround and pound to the extent that we can do that. Here we actually took a bit of a downhill charge, but I like to think the dwarves don't have very much charge bonus, being quite slow moving. Who knows? So yes, their archers are running to the back, we can just pursue them, and my main focus is to hit the enemy's general. Doesn't really matter what happens to the other units, we just want to get the character kill so he doesn't run off after the battle. Would have auto-resolved this otherwise. And indeed that general does start dying quite fast. If I engage him with only my elite units, so the Orthanc guards and the berserkers, they actually get the work done. I'm guessing it was helped out a little bit by the enemy general having no experience. I think he was low level and had no rank ups on his bodyguards. So anyway, it went much better than in the last fight. We killed their heavy infantry easily without losing unit after unit when they break out of our encirclement. And that was the end of that. Their general's in there somewhere with like 1 guard. As for their archers, I used my archers against them. And since finally we're facing guys who aren't actually that good defensively, we are able to kill them with our arrows, and this usual rear attack into the back strategy works pretty well. We even saw them rout. Now that's incredible. I'm guessing these lower tier Dwarven units don't just have infinite morale, so that's fine. Down goes the general, and that means we're effectively done here. In fact, it does, because it chain routes the remaining sentries in their other unit. A good result. That all went fine. In the aftermath of that, we can immediately make some progress. We can send 1 unit to go capture that fort on the road up to Khazad-dûm. So there we have it. Now we're a little bit more secure, and we don't have to pay for that unit. As for everything else though, I'm actually going to go over to the east and try to deal with this new siege at Karas Galaton. Looks like that's going to be enough stuff to stop the small enemy group, especially when I reinforce with some guys taken out of the Linhir garrison. In the next turn, they've actually disengaged from the siege and started moving north. I decided to pursue them, might as well. There's another enemy settlement up there, so we can go for that. I engage these guys and take a look at these special units. They've got some more heavy inf. including guys in the mid-30s for their defensive stats. I think that's the highest defense I've seen so far. All good stuff, better than the like 8 that our units have, well, our lower tier units. This army is actually full of good units at this point because all the lower tier units have died in the previous engagements. So we're actually quite strong, and we do get a good auto-resolve there. We kill the captives and a few of them go back to garrison that town, and we are going to pursue. I thought we might as well just go and take it right now. Not that much inside. And there's not that much to worry about back in our territory. Khazad-dûm are unlikely to send more stuff down at us because they're in trouble overall. I don't think they have any more territory than the stuff we can already see. Here we are in the next turn, just setting up the siege with a ton of siege towers. I was planning to do this attack because it's a special dwarvish type settlement and I wanted to see what it was like. Our reinforcements from Isengard are starting to arrive now, and with them being here, our realm is going to be totally secure. We have, for all intents and purposes, won this war. I think it's just going to be a matter of time before we finish the dwarves off. But now we're going to jump back over to our war with Rohan, where a decisive battle is nigh. My plan to siege out their big army at Dantalad is over because somebody came over here to challenge us. Looks like it's just a tiny group of 50 men, but it means we have to fight the entire stack inside as well. So my cheeky free victory plan is over. It's time for a decisive battle to decide the fate of wherever this place is. They've got a fair number of decent units, including their heavy cav, but we have loads of generals' bodyguards, which makes up for a decent infantry line on our own side. There was a little bit of a pre-battle, because a few riders from that first army that initiated the fight came over here, charged all the way across the field and then into the front of my pike wall. An excellent choice from these riders. They did cause me to inflict some friendly fire on myself with my archers, so I suppose that's an achievement. Then they came over with the other scraps from that first army. The most annoying thing here was their skirmishers actually, because their tiny group of Riddermark skirmishers took so many arrows to get rid of. You can see on my archers we're going down towards half ammo just to kill the like 3 or 4 guys we need to kill to get these small units to rout. Very annoying, so they did kind of achieve something with this pointless attack. But the main action starts a while later when their army coming on to the field at the other side comes over here. Still, we're getting trouble from Riddermark skirmishers, this time a full unit. They're throwing jabs at the front of my pikes, and that's the right thing to do there. They can gradually kill my pikes off with an attack like that. How annoying. My only real counter is to shoot them with my archers. They're going to take a while to get into position and indeed to kill anything. There was one other option though, and that is to charge the wargs out, and that's what I went for in the end. Charging the wargs out just kind of turns this whole skirmishing blob into a melee blob. Our wargs will die super fast, but it stops them from firing and buys me some time to charge out with spear guard. At the other end of the line, things went well because they charged their melee cav into the front of our Dunlending pikes. Just what we like to see. We got surrounded instantly, but that's still going to be an okay fight, I imagine. Now the main fight along the front line will start. The enemy's generals are ploughing in, and a whole bunch of random infantry units will go in there as well. But as I mentioned, I think we have the infantry advantage, so I'm not too worried about what's going on there. I'm focusing on these flanks. Here we're going to eat a massive charge. One of their heavy lancer units hits the front of my line where these raiders are, and they die pretty fast. We lose like 70 men in 2 seconds. After that though, once the charge is gone, I'm guessing the lancers aren't that good, who knows, but they're going to fight on anyway, and I don't really mind losing my troops at this point in the campaign, especially raiders who can be replenished easily. We've got a couple of units of berserkers in reserve who are ready to fill these gaps in the lines anyway, and then will fight better after that as well. Out on the right, the enemy have some inf in amongst my spear guards, so my fight with the enemy cav is getting messy, but we have locked down most of their cav out there and we're rapidly killing them. Same thing on the left, our pikes are just working through several units of cav on their own, don't really need to pay much attention to that. And the infantry fight is gradually being won. We have momentum on our side because our units are better, presumably anyway. I don't actually know these Rohan infantry stats. I like to think they're bad, so we can start pushing down, and in particular you can see in the centre right we've pushed all the way down into their archer block to get their archers into melee as well. That's looking good. We need to actually do some tactics, quote unquote, at this point in the battle. Everything's committed and this fight's just an enormous line, so all I can do is use my Dunlending cav to rear attack people. You can see I tried it here, we didn't do all that much because it's Dunlending cav, but the idea is there, we might be able to reduce enemy morale. So we're going to focus on doing cycle charges, a rare thing for this campaign. I also wanted Saruman to snipe the enemy's faction leader, who's right there in front of him, I believe. I think the line of sight wasn't as good as I thought it was actually because there's a slight hill, but oh well. So the left end of the line is now secure, all the enemy cav are dead, the Dunlendings are still cycle charging away and actually not really routing enemy units, but it looks good. It traps them in place and probably makes them feel a little bit uneasy about how absolutely annihilated they're getting. That balance bar is starting to look pretty good at this point in the fight. We've probably got them. We just want to get them real good so that we can go on with plenty of survivors and go get some other stuff after this. Out on the far right, I was running about crazily with my surviving wargs and Dunlendings, trying not to fight the remaining enemy units. And nicely, they all ended up fighting my spear guard. We lost quite a few spear guard out there actually, but they traded very well. They killed pretty much all the enemy cav. Here's a nice rear charge into the back of the enemy's pikes. Only a light cav charge, so it doesn't do all that much, but it does enough, and it interestingly forces the pikes to break formation and move forwards into my reavers, who'll start hacking them to pieces. They're going to go down soon. I'm surprised they haven't routed. It's just Rohan's magic morale. It's probably not helping that the enemy have their max rank faction leader on the field. Or do they? At this point, somewhere in these brawls, Theodred the Kind manages to die. Very kind of him. And with that, the battle suddenly ends because everything else routs. But we want to keep going, firstly because there's another general somewhere. Started looking around to see if I could finish him off, and he died somewhere, so there we go, that's that sorted. And we still want to keep going because we need to kill all of these reinforcement units. They're going back to the settlement. We can use this as a siege draw out if we get enough kills. And because the enemy cav were not routing earlier and all killed themselves fighting my pikes, very little has actually escaped so far. Here's the result after the chase. We lost 600 and something men, the enemy lost over a couple of thousand, which was pretty much all of the stuff on the field, meaning we did actually get the siege draw out. However, the fight for Dantalad is not over yet, because this little group comes over to attack Saruman for some reason, and we kill them. I guess they wish to ride for Ruin and a Red Dawn, etc., and die along with the rest of the Rohirrim. So we give them that, then we sack the settlement, and our business is done. We've successfully taken a massive region, but there's still at least like 3 more Rohan regions, I think, somewhere else, so we'll have to keep going. The very first thing I do at the start of the next turn is leave 1 unit behind. The locals were pretty happy to be ruled by Saruman, so that's fine, and everything else moves on. We quickly defeat an army, slap down a watchtower for some vision in this mostly fog of war covered area, and we'll move to the northeast, where at least 2 more Rohan settlements have already been discovered by my spies. In terms of defences, we don't need to worry, because to the north it's Dol Guldur, to the south Mordor, and to the east it's Rhûn, all evil side factions who probably won't attack me, so we don't need to leave anything behind for that purpose. At the start of the next turn though, looks like we've got some bad news. It's the last ride of the Rohirrim, apt for riding to Rhûn and to Red Dawn. Looks like a bunch of other people want to do the same thing. So obviously this is a warning, effectively saying that Rohan have spawned some more stuff like they did after Edoras. There's a circle pointing out somewhere into the forest there, and that's because the One Ring is there. It says it's been located, but I thought it was there already. I thought it went to Lothlorien and then moved away long before we went there to that place up at the top of the forest. I guess it moved there again. Maybe it can be relocated to the same place. Who knows? Anyway, we need to find that stack of Rohan stuff that's probably somewhere. Looking out to the front lines, we can see 2 of their settlements. Neither of them seem to have gigantic stacks, and we don't see any stacks in the wilds. But with the fog of war all over the place, that's no reason to believe it's not there somewhere. However, I went back to look at my territory thinking surely it spawned like at Helm's Deep or something, that would be a nice place. And it turned out it spawned here in that old elf place. That's not so bad, it's still kind of near to where our units are. If it spawned at like Isengard, that could be entertaining. So we do have stuff nearby, but actually the majority of the stuff is locked down, controlling public order, or doing this. My recently arrived reinforcement army is going to just besiege Khazad-dûm and keep everything locked inside. I think that'll stop them recruiting things. There's no rush to kill them, we can just wait for ages to siege them out and see what happens with that. Although it might have a special map, so I think I'll probably take a look on the inside anyway in a manual resolve with that one. Now with this siege of the bandits, where I didn't want to do it because it looked kind of hard, half of them have died due to siege attrition, so I just auto-resolved it in the end to get it 1 turn before I would have otherwise from the siege, meaning that we now have these troops freed up to do something and defend if the nearby Rohan army comes in. I annoyingly though occupied the territory instead of sacking, and now it's actually ready to rebel again already, so that's no good. Back at Isengard, we're moving out with some new units. We've got a fresh army put together and more stuff on the way. We'll soon have another full stack in this area to gradually move over and join the wars. Saruman needs to get moving towards the next Rohan settlement. The retreat of the army we killed last turn revealed the best route. We come over here where there's a river crossing and join the road. There's a few troops here who die instantly, and on we go from there. There's not that much defending that place, Logarth, so it looks like we're going to be able to do it. Depends if they have anything else nearby, we'll just have to find out. We somehow reached the start of the next turn without being attacked by that freely spawned Rohan army. In fact, it's actually gone. I'm not quite sure where it went. So that's a bit of an issue, really. It's nice to not have that sort of thing lurking around in the fog of war, or in our forests indeed. This place is on the verge of rebelling again, as I mentioned. They're rioting, they're just really uppity. They're a bunch of humans with elven culture. I think that's a bad combination. It's the Elphaboos. So we're going to have to do more to lock them down, or at least let them kill each other enough in the rioting that squalor goes down, and then they'll be a bit happier with their living arrangements. Anyway, here I am looking around thinking, where is that full stack? Where's it gone? We do not need these guys lurking around the place. Since we can't see them though, I suppose we can't really react in any way, so we have to just ignore it for now and see if they ever pop up again. Meanwhile, I thought I'd come down here and do this battle at the Dwarvish mining complex that I mentioned earlier. Not because it's decisive or important in any way, just wanted to see what the map would be like and if there's any kind of special Dwarvish stuff going on here. The garrison inside isn't that much to worry about. Looks like they've got Dwarvish labourers, that must be dwarf trash, and the good units are nearly dead, although they do have a super ranked up general, Gloin the Just, presumably Gloin from Gimli, son of Gloin fame. Anyway, so I'll do that, and we'll take a look at the highlights of that, a bit of tourism at the start of the next part. Then we'll get back to business with our war with Rohan, really.